I woke up late and completely forgot to take my medication until like 4 hours later when I just started getting this brain zappy. God, I hope it's not worse than brain zaps or something. It seems to be related to vestibular or whatever the heck, you know. And, oh, I forgot I was wearing these. And it's like when I turn my head, it's like dropped frames. I feel like just sort of a zappiness in my head, but also my heart jumps. I should probably tell my doctor. Anyway, I had my autism pre-assessment yesterday. I guess the previous assessment was a pre-assessment. So the first round was with I can't English. I can't actually. I have a really hard time remembering or noticing people's credentials and job descriptions and things like that because it's one of those things that I can't make myself care about, even if I want to care about it. So I had an intake appointment to the psychiatry department, which I talked about in a previous video, I believe. Terrible memory. And I forgot I was wearing these. That's why I felt like there was something in my ears. Yeah, so I had this appointment a few weeks ago, relatively recently. And then I secured through that appointment. I guess that was supposed to be the first filtering mechanism so they don't waste more resources if I clearly am not on the spectrum. So I got through that first pre-assessment, I don't know what to call it, intake appointment, and then that got me a referral to this psychologist, I believe. I looked up her credentials after the meeting because I realized I have no idea if she's a doctor or a therapist or whatever. So she's some type of a psychologist. My creepy internet research suggests that autism is not her specialty, but she's on the sort of like autism team. Which I guess, I'm just going to assume that she has at least enough awareness of autistic traits to presumably be qualified to decide whether or not it's worth sending somebody on for a full assessment with, then I'm assuming that's when I'd see the hardcore autism specialist. So yeah, it was the assessment, I don't know what to call it, the meeting was led by this psychologist, and there was also I think a caseworker present who I guess was mainly there as like a second opinion, a sort of silent observer, I don't know what I just said, observer, yeah, I guess taking notes and that kind of thing, and I'd written a shit ton of notes for myself, but I just didn't get around to organizing them very well. So I was pretty prepared, ultimately. And I'd even persuaded my dad to go through a bunch of old videos from when I was a kid, and he was very good about it and like converted a bunch of them to digital formats, and I scoured probably at least a couple of hours worth of videos of myself from the ages of like 1 all the way up through, I think, 17, to try to see if there were any obvious, Asperger's or autistic sort of signs, whether it was just, I don't know, like any, yeah, I'm holding a little bag for these things. Anyway, I didn't come up with much, to be honest. I don't know that I looked like a totally neurotypical kid or anything, but I definitely, as a layman who has maybe studied autism a little bit obsessively, but not as much as, somebody who gets paid to do it, I didn't notice anything that was really worth talking about, other than maybe occasionally seeming too wrapped up in whatever important business my 3-year-old self had to really give a shit about what adults were trying to get my attention. Although in some of those cases it was because I had like terrible hearing problems, I think, as a result of like just completely stuffed up head and inflamed tonsils and all that kind of thing. Anyway, that's a diversion from the actual topic, which was the process of the assessment itself and the results. So the process was basically sort of, this woman asking me, all right, so why are you here? What makes you think that you might be on the spectrum? And I think I even asked, like, okay, maybe could you like clarify, like, do you have actual more specific questions? Because that would be helpful, so I'm not just rambling. But I think maybe part of the goal was to get me to ramble and just see how, like, if there was anything weird about my overall engagement. And I managed to get through about, I think, about half of the notes that I'd written down. And occasionally, when it seemed like she had enough information on a given topic or in a given area, she would kind of shift it to the next thing. But just kind of blanking out, trying to remember anything salient. I actually wrote notes for this video, so I, in the hopes of not having to chop it up, into like a million little edits. But of course I completely forgot once I started talking, so let me just check those real fast. Yeah, it was just mostly a lot of me rambling. I felt like I had a good rapport with this person, which is not what you want if you're trying to persuade somebody that you're autistic. But I also don't want to persuade her that I'm autistic if I'm not. I do want to know what actually is the case, so whatever. But yeah, the meeting was only about 45 minutes. It's not like the full-on thing, which I've heard lasts like all day. Ultimately, she and the caseworker, I guess, agreed with her. She said, I definitely have a lot of autistic traits, but she doesn't think that I'm diagnosable, but she did recommend me for the next stage, which is, I believe, the full autism assessment. So I definitely was kind of disappointed and a bit frustrated when, she said that, like, she didn't think that I was autistic, but, I might not be. It's a perfectly reasonable assumption on her part, especially based on the information I have available. I don't know. But yeah, I'm pretty stoked that I got recommended for the actual assessment. I'll be much more comfortable, I think, accepting a sort of like, no, you're not autistic verdict once I've, really done the whole rigmarole. And I think part of what I found a bit frustrating about the meeting, although, they were very nice and I didn't have any complaints there, was that she sort of outlined the reasoning that she thinks I might not be autistic, which was essentially, you seem to make good eye contact over Zoom, but she said not a lot, I don't know. She said not everybody does make good eye contact over Zoom. Not that I was looking into my camera, but I guess, like, I was looking at my screen. And I guess she was sort of saying some people will just spend the whole time looking off around here, even though that's kind of what I felt like. I felt like I was probably doing the normal thing, I guess, of, like, looking off into space a fair amount while I was talking, and then kind of just staring at her or at the other person who was there. I don't know. Yeah, the eye contact thing, and then I think the other thing she pointed out was that I didn't seem to have a monotone or, I don't know, sufficiently idiosyncratic way of speaking, which is another one of those things. And both of those things are commonly masked, from what I understand, particularly by autistic women or higher functioning Asperger, whatever, I don't know. Like, it's much easier to diagnose somebody who has really poor eye contact and speaks in a monotone, obviously. So I appreciate that she didn't rule me out just because I have, I don't want to be flippant and be like, because I have social skills, but anyway, I feel really weird when there's dead air, and I'm like, I should cut it, but I'm determined to not cut this video at all. Ow, I just hurt myself playing with this. I just discovered these recently. Total tangent. They're like, you can, like, they got sticky and you stick them to the wall at, like, ground level or wherever, and you could just put your little cable through there for some cable organization, which I appreciate. Anyway, what was I talking about? Oh, she did actually, at one point, I think, ask about ADHD, I think because maybe one of the things that I'd mentioned sounded a little bit ADHD to her, and I was like, well, I was sort of assessed, like, through the same organization that was assessing me here, so it was a little bit weird. Apparently, I think they had access to my medical history, especially my medical history with this organization, but they didn't seem to have access, or they didn't seem to have looked at it before, so she seemed surprised or confused by a lot of things that I said, and I tended to forget, like, pretty important things, like, oh yeah, by the way, I have debilitating migraines. Like, oops. In fact, I think she still doesn't know, because the meeting got cut off before it occurred to me to mention to her that, like, oh yeah, I'm starting and not finishing sentences. Near the end of the meeting, she said something along the lines of, well, we don't really think you have a diagnosable case here, but that's a good thing. You at 31 years old, that's probably what you want to hear, really, is that, yeah, you have some traits, but you're doing fine. And I was kind of like, well, I'm not really doing fine. That was the point at the very end of the meeting, at which I realized, like, oh shit, I neglected to mention that, like, yeah, I work like 11 hours a week. I'm not really financially independent. I'm kind of financially independent at this point, after, 10 years of working on that. But, like, I can't afford rent on my own. I can't, like, shit's not great. It's getting better, but it's not great. Um, Man, yeah, it's hard to lay out any type of sensible narrative without having it outlined, because I don't have a great memory of what I just said. So anyway, trying to think if there's anything I forgot to mention. I'm sure I started a thread there and dropped it, but if it's important, you can go ahead and let me know. Or also, if anybody has any questions, it feels weird saying anybody when, like, presumably one person at a time, is watching. Anyway, if you have any questions that you want to ask about, anything really, like, I pretty much have no boundaries, so go ahead. Um, yeah, was that it? Now, the only other thing I thought it would be maybe good to mention is, it was kind of nice that I think when I brought up, I did remember to bring up the weird gender thing, because there's a disproportionate number of autistic people who have just, like, weird gender feels, and a disproportionate number of people with weird gender feels who are autistic. So I was like, yeah, I mean, I guess I identify as non-binary, and that's the thing, or whatever. And then she actually was, like, super nice about it. I mean, not that I was expecting her to be rude about it or anything, but she was, like, kind of above and beyond what I would have considered necessary personally, where she was like, oh, do you have preferred pronouns that you want me to refer to you in the documentation? I was like, like, I have been trying to go by they them, but honestly, I don't really care. Like, I don't want you to have to go back and rewrite it. And sorry, I keep playing with this thing. I shocked myself by accidentally flinging it. Remind me of that in a moment, because there's a thing. And she actually also offered to update my nickname or name or whatever, because I think my birth name is in there, and it's very, like, feminine and flowery, and I haven't gone by that in a while. Yeah, and my gender in my information, my medical information, which I was like, that's super nice, because I don't know how to do that, and I sure as hell don't have the energy to do that, so I don't know, that felt kind of good. Um, but, oh yeah, throwing objects, apropos of nothing. Actually, I think this is some weird proprioception thing, possibly, and I would not be surprised if this was common among autistic people, or just neurodivergent people in general, but, I have this thing, apparently, like, I'm clumsy probably in all the ways, but especially in this one particular way that I think is unusual enough that it surprises people sometimes. Um, yeah, so I'll be holding something, and I'll know that I'm holding it, and then I'll go to manipulate it, and it almost feels as though my brain forgets that it was holding it, or is surprised in some sense by what it's encountering, because I'll find myself flinging the object. This happens a lot with my phone. So I'll be holding my phone, and then yesterday I went to show my boyfriend something. Like, I was standing talking to my boyfriend, holding my phone at my side, and then I lifted it up to show it to him. But instead what I did was I flung it. Not directly at him, but pretty much. Like, I pretty much threw my phone at him accidentally. Uh, Essentially what was happening was I was dropping it, but it's just this weird reflex thing that happens sometimes when it's like, trigger the clumsiness program or whatever, run clumsiness.exe. I don't fucking know programming shit, I'm sorry. And yeah, I just basically accidentally threw my phone, which happens all the time, but he cracked up for a solid, like, 30 seconds, and I was like, you're not used to this by now? Is it really that weird? I guess it's really that weird. Anyway, of course, no word on when the proper autism assessment will be. I don't know if you can hear that, but there's some loud, like, motorbike or something speeding by. But there will, in fact, be a proper autism assessment, which in itself is pretty exciting. Although I found myself feeling that this whole thing was pretty anticlimactic. I think I was expecting. I don't know. I wrote down my prediction in advance, which I think was like 75% likelihood that I'll get a sort of like, well, we don't really know if you're autistic, so we're gonna send you on to the next step, which is exactly what happened. So I was right, but I was still kind of surprised by like the pure sort of 50-50 nature of the thing, I guess. The like, well, we don't really think you have it, but sure, why not? I still don't know how much it's going to cost or like how this is going to work because I'm doing it through like an insurance organization. I don't know. I feel like it would be somehow doxing myself or them. Why would I care about them? I'm like a little bit paranoid about disclosing which organization this is, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I kind of almost don't care how much it costs at this point because it's like at least if I get the information, you know, if it's a thing that doesn't have to be paid up front, if I can pay it off over time, like, is it really going to be worse? Probably not. I don't know. I don't want to sound like a rich bitch, because I'm not, but I'm feeling psychically, psychologically, I'm feeling a lot more secure, even though my finances haven't really changed much lately, so, yeah. Anyway, I'll update with the, oh god, you've already got pit stains. I've been wearing this shirt for, like, literally... I put it on right before this video. That's how much of like an anxiety sweater or a normal sweater I am. I think I'm an anxiety sweater because I do have a diagnosed anxiety disorder, but also anxiety sweat smells detectably worse and different from normal sweat, and it ain't good. But yeah, so I will update with any updates. It probably won't be for a while. They probably won't even contact me for a while. Frankly, I'm astonished that, especially during a pandemic, it's only been, what, like a month or two, maybe, I don't know how long it's been, but it sure hasn't been that long since I started the process of trying to get an autism assessment. So yeah, and in the meantime, I think I'm going to try to post more videos. I don't want to suggest an increased frequency, but like an additional number of videos, not just about potential autism or anything. I guess I should probably post more about the other reasons I think I might be autistic while I'm waiting. And I might do other things like not educational things, but like personal experience things, like about, I never remember what they're called, body focused repetitive BFD disorder? Is that right? Disorders? I don't know, but that type of thing. Or yeah, I don't know. And if there's any topics that for some reason you want to hear me ramble about, I mean, I'll try to be more organized if somebody actually asks me a question. But yeah, feel free to drop a comment or I don't know if you know me on other platforms or know me in real life or whatever. Just like hit me up, however is best. That's, I believe, all I got. Have a good evening or whatever time of day it is.